I can't remember anybody except the Queen being there. It must have been so difficult for her being a solitary woman. There weren't women prime ministers or women presidents. She was the only one, so I think she carved her own role.
Prince Philip's final secret may have done what no royal scandal ever could: leave Queen Camilla locked out of the crown's most powerful residences. As whispers of a hidden decree spread, questions erupted over whether this was constitutional protection, personal revenge, or something far more calculated. Palace silence only fueled speculation, while supporters and critics fiercely debated who truly controls the monarchy behind closed doors. So, was this Philip's last act of duty, or his most devastating judgment against Camilla, or a carefully engineered safeguard all along? Behind palace doors changed forever. Queen Camilla arrived at Clarence House expecting a routine meeting to confirm her permanent royal accommodation. Instead, everything changed when a sealed document carrying Prince Philip's authority was presented. What seemed like ordinary business became one of the most unsettling moments of her time as Queen Consort. As the document was read aloud, the room fell noticeably quiet. Senior aides exchanged uncertain glances, while every sentence carried consequences that seemed increasingly impossible to ignore. The decree stated that Camilla could continue carrying out official engagements inside Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, Balmoral, and Sandringham. Yet, she could never establish permanent residential authority within any of them. She could visit when duty required, remain temporarily during official responsibilities, but permanent control over these crown residences would remain beyond her reach. The distinction sounded technical at first, but it carried enormous constitutional weight. Crown residences were not private homes belonging personally to the reigning monarch. They existed as institutional properties preserved for the monarchy itself, making them subject to long-standing constitutional arrangements rather than personal preference. That difference transformed the decree from what might have appeared to be a family disagreement into something far more significant. This was no simple household decision that Charles could quietly reverse with a signature. Charles himself appeared caught between disbelief and responsibility. As he reviewed the document, it became increasingly clear that the decree had already entered official constitutional procedure before reaching the room. Its provisions were not presented as suggestions or personal wishes, but as instructions tied to the monarchy's institutional framework. That realization altered everything. Even as king, Charles faced limits that could not simply be ignored without challenging established protections surrounding crown property. For Camilla, the emotional impact extended well beyond access to royal buildings. The decree suggested that despite years of public service, criticism, and unwavering support for Charles, there remained boundaries she could never fully cross. The restriction touched not only where she could stay, but what her position truly meant behind palace walls. Supporters might see an unfair rejection, while others could argue it reflected constitutional safeguards designed to outlast every reign. Either interpretation left uncomfortable questions unanswered. If Prince Philip had gone to such extraordinary lengths to create these restrictions, then the greatest mystery was no longer what the decree said, but why he believed such lasting protections were necessary in the first place. The hidden warnings Philip left behind raised deeper mysteries about what he truly feared. Did he foresee a battle within the monarchy that others dismissed? Was the decree designed to prevent a crisis still waiting to unfold? And what secret revelation will emerge from this? Let's find out. Hidden plans shaped royal future. As the first shock of the decree settled, attention slowly shifted away from what Prince Philip had ordered and toward a far more unsettling question. Why had he believed such sweeping restrictions were necessary in the first place? The document no longer appeared to be an emotional reaction or a personal judgment. Instead, it looked like the final piece of a plan that had been developing quietly for years, long before it was ever placed before Queen Camilla at Clarence House. That realization transformed the entire situation from a family disagreement into a much deeper constitutional mystery. Prince Philip had spent decades watching the monarchy evolve through changing public expectations, personal crises, and generational transitions. Throughout that time, he consistently viewed the institution as something that had to survive beyond individual personalities. According to the discussions surrounding the decree, he believed that protecting the crown required planning many years ahead rather than responding only after problems appeared. His concern was never limited to titles or ceremonies. Instead, he focused on the structures that quietly supported royal authority behind palace walls. This way of thinking explained why operational control mattered so much to him. Access to private apartments, household offices, staff appointments, and working spaces inside crown residences shaped how the monarchy functioned every day. These responsibilities rarely attracted public attention, yet they influenced how decisions were made and how future reigns would eventually operate. Philip appeared convinced that informal influence inside these spaces could gradually alter the balance between the reigning monarch and those waiting to inherit the crown. Some people around him reportedly viewed these concerns as overly cautious. Others believed the monarchy had already modernized enough to make such fears unnecessary. Yet Philip's private planning suggested he disagreed. Rather than trusting future circumstances to unfold naturally, he preferred establishing safeguards before disagreements could emerge. His approach reflected preparation instead of reaction, even if many failed to recognize its importance at the time. As more details surrounding the decree surfaced, the pattern became increasingly difficult to ignore. The restrictions were not written to address one temporary dispute. They appeared designed to anticipate situations that might arise years later, regardless of who occupied the throne or lived inside the royal residences. That long-term perspective hinted that Philip had been thinking well beyond his own lifetime, placing institutional stability above personal relationships. For Camilla, this possibility made the decree even harder to accept. If Philip had envisioned future conflicts long before they became reality, then every restriction now seemed deliberate rather than accidental. Supporters could interpret his actions as careful constitutional planning, while critics might question whether excessive caution had become unnecessary control. Either way, one conclusion became increasingly unavoidable. The true story was no longer simply about where Camilla could live, but about what Prince Philip believed needed protection before anyone else even recognized the danger. Charles may hold the crown, yet even his authority faces unseen boundaries. Could this decree reveal a deeper power struggle? Why would those closest to the throne allow such limits to remain? And what happens when Charles discovers the final barrier standing before him now? Keep watching. Power meets invisible constitutional boundaries. Queen Camilla believed the answer rested with one man alone. As reigning monarch, King Charles appeared to possess the authority to remove the restrictions contained within Prince Philip's secret decree. After the painful revelations surrounding the crown residences, it seemed reasonable to expect that a simple royal decision could restore what had just been taken away. Yet, as private discussions unfolded behind palace walls, a far more complicated reality began to emerge, one that challenged even the king's position at the center of the monarchy. Charles quietly examined the decree, hoping to discover some overlooked provision that would allow him to intervene without creating wider consequences. Instead, every page reinforced the same unsettling conclusion. The document was connected to established constitutional procedures rather than personal wishes. Palace legal advisors explained that the protections surrounding crown residences had been built into institutional arrangements intended to survive changes of reign. Those safeguards were designed to preserve continuity, making them far more difficult to reverse than an ordinary royal instruction. This distinction changed the entire conversation. Crown residences did not function as private family homes that a monarch could freely distribute according to personal preference. They existed for the service of the institution itself, carrying responsibilities that extended beyond any individual sovereign. That meant Charles was no longer dealing with a disagreement inside his own household. He was confronting rules intended to protect the monarchy across generations. As the legal implications became clearer, another unexpected development deepened the crisis. Princess Anne had been entrusted with enforcing parts of Philip's final instructions. Her responsibility was not symbolic, but practical, requiring her to safeguard the decree exactly as it had been written. Alongside her stood Prince William, whose constitutional role placed him within the approval process for future decisions affecting the protected residences. Their involvement demonstrated that authority over these arrangements had been deliberately shared rather than left in the hands of a single monarch. For Camilla, the realization was devastating. She had entered the situation believing Charles could defend her through his position as king. Instead, she discovered that his authority operated within limits established long before he inherited the throne. His personal loyalty could not automatically override constitutional commitments tied to the crown's future. Some observers might interpret these restrictions as evidence that Philip never trusted changing family circumstances. Others could argue they reflected careful planning meant to protect future heirs from uncertainty rather than target any individual. Whatever the motivation, the immediate result remained the same. The greatest obstacle facing Camilla was no longer opposition from particular members of the royal family. It was an institutional framework that appeared designed to withstand emotion, personal influence, and even the wishes of the sovereign himself. Leaving the future surrounded by uncertainty and unanswered questions, behind the hidden architecture of Philip's decree, another question emerges. Was this truly about residences, or a deeper plan for royal control and succession? Could unseen clauses reshape the monarchy's future in ways nobody anticipated? And what revelation waits beyond this carefully designed blueprint? Stay with us. Secrets hidden beyond palace walls. As palace officials continued examining Prince Philip's decree, a surprising discovery changed how everyone understood the document. What first appeared to be a restriction on where Queen Camilla could establish a permanent home gradually revealed itself as something much broader. Hidden within its detailed provisions were carefully arranged safeguards that reached into nearly every part of the monarchy's internal operation. The deeper they looked, the clearer it became that the decree was never simply about buildings. It was about preserving how royal authority would function long after Philip was gone. Previously overlooked clauses drew new attention, limiting authority over crown residences, staff appointments, office arrangements, room allocations, and long-term planning. Though rarely discussed publicly, the decree placed these responsibilities beyond the control of any single individual, regardless of title. This distinction exposed an important difference between ceremonial importance and operational authority. As queen consort, Camilla retained her public role, attended official events, and represented the monarchy alongside King Charles. However, ceremonial visibility did not automatically grant administrative influence. Behind every royal appearance stood an extensive network of staff, procedures, residences, and working offices. Philip's planning appeared focused on protecting those unseen systems from becoming dependent upon changing personal relationships. The more officials studied the document, the more deliberate its design appeared. Rather than responding to one particular circumstance, it established layers of protection intended to remain effective through future reigns. Operational access inside crown residences meant influence over schedules, private meetings, household management, and the practical environment surrounding the sovereign. Philip seemed convinced that controlling those quiet spaces could eventually shape decisions affecting the institution itself. Some observers interpreted these arrangements as remarkable foresight. Others questioned whether such extensive safeguards reflected unnecessary caution. Both perspectives acknowledged the same reality. The decree reached far beyond questions of accommodation and entered the heart of constitutional continuity. It protected procedures instead of personalities, making its influence difficult to separate from the monarchy's long-term stability. For Camilla, each newly examined clause made the situation more painful. Every discovery suggested the restrictions had been carefully considered years before they ever became public. Rather than finding weaknesses within the document, officials uncovered evidence of increasingly detailed preparation. What initially seemed like one difficult decision now resembled an entire constitutional blueprint built to guide future generations. That growing realization changed the investigation itself. The mystery was no longer whether Philip had limited Camilla's residential authority, but how extensively he had planned for circumstances that many believed might never arrive. The palace walls may hide the arguments, but can they conceal the wounds this decree has created? Will Charles choose love or legacy when both demand sacrifice? Could Anne's loyalty reveal a truth nobody expected? The next confrontation may change everything, but who will stand alone? Stay tuned. Loyalty collides with royal duty. The deeper the consequences of Prince Philip's decree became, the more impossible the situation grew for every senior member of the royal family. What had begun as a constitutional question about crown residences slowly evolved into an emotional crisis that no legal explanation could fully resolve. Every conversation now carried personal weight, and every decision seemed destined to leave someone disappointed. The issue was no longer confined to documents and procedures. It had entered the relationships holding the monarchy together. For Queen Camilla, the restrictions felt deeply personal. After years spent supporting King Charles through public criticism, private challenges, and the long journey to becoming queen consort, she believed she had earned a lasting place within the institution. Instead, the decree suggested there were limits that loyalty alone could never remove. Although she retained her title and ceremonial responsibilities, the message behind the restrictions left her questioning whether complete acceptance had ever truly been possible. King Charles found himself standing at the center of an impossible dilemma. As husband, he naturally wanted to protect Camilla from further pain. As monarch, he also carried responsibility for preserving constitutional stability. Those two duties suddenly pointed in different directions. Any attempt to challenge Philip's carefully constructed protections risked creating wider uncertainty around succession, while refusing to act could appear as though he had abandoned the woman standing beside him. Prince William viewed the situation through another perspective entirely. His concern focused on safeguarding the future responsibilities attached to the direct line of succession. From that position, Philip's decree represented continuity rather than punishment. Supporting those protections did not necessarily reflect personal opposition toward Camilla. Instead, it reflected a belief that institutional safeguards should remain stronger than temporary pressures, regardless of how painful the circumstances became. Princess Anne approached the matter with equal determination. Entrusted with carrying out parts of Philip's final instructions, she treated that responsibility as a solemn obligation rather than a personal choice. Her role required consistency, even when emotions ran high. Meanwhile, Catherine appeared determined to prevent the growing disagreement from becoming a lasting family divide. Rather than encouraging confrontation, she seemed focused on preserving stability during an already sensitive period for the monarchy. Outside palace walls, public discussion intensified as details surrounding the decree became increasingly difficult to ignore. Some interpreted Philip's actions as an unfair judgment against Camilla, while others believed he had simply protected the constitutional future of the crown. The contrasting opinions reflected the same uncomfortable reality. The decree had become more than an internal royal matter. It now exposed how differently each member of the family understood duty, loyalty, and responsibility, leaving the monarchy facing questions that extended far beyond the walls of its historic residences. Beyond the palace walls, a silent battle over duty and devotion reaches its final stage. Did Charles protect the crown or sacrifice something irreplaceable? Could Camilla's new reality reveal Philip's ultimate strategy? And will history judge this decision as wisdom or heartbreak in time? Stay glued. Duty outlasted every personal wish. King Charles ultimately reached the decision many believed he had tried to avoid from the very beginning. After carefully weighing the constitutional implications surrounding Prince Philip's secret decree, he chose not to challenge the restrictions governing the crown residences. It was a choice that protected the institutional framework of the monarchy, yet it carried a deeply personal cost. Rather than reversing the decree for Queen Camilla, he accepted that some responsibilities attached to the crown extended beyond the wishes of any individual sovereign. For Camilla, the decision marked the end of one difficult chapter and the beginning of another. She remained queen consort, continued carrying out official engagements, and retained the public dignity expected of her position. Yet the distinction between ceremonial authority and operational control became impossible to ignore. She could represent the monarchy before the nation, but the permanent administration of its principal residences remained governed by constitutional arrangements established long before the crisis unfolded. That difference gradually reshaped how her role was understood. Public appearances continued, official duties remained unchanged, and her place beside Charles endured. Behind palace walls, however, the decree had quietly redrawn the boundaries of influence. The crown residences were no longer viewed simply as places where members of the royal family lived. They represented carefully protected institutions designed to serve future reigns rather than individual preferences. Outside the royal household, public opinion slowly evolved. Some continued viewing Philip's final decision as unnecessarily severe, believing it placed constitutional theory above compassion. Others argued that his planning demonstrated remarkable foresight, protecting the monarchy from uncertainty that might otherwise emerge during future transitions. The debate revealed how differently people interpreted the balance between personal loyalty and institutional responsibility. Neither perspective completely erased the emotional impact of the decree. As discussions continued, one conclusion became increasingly difficult to dismiss. Philip's long-term vision appeared to have achieved exactly what it intended. The constitutional safeguards remained intact, succession protections survived unchanged, and the operational structure surrounding the crown residences continued beyond the lives of those directly affected. Whether that outcome justified the pain experienced along the way remained a matter of personal judgment rather than universal agreement. Camilla's story, therefore, became about more than access to royal homes. It became a reflection on the sacrifices sometimes demanded by an institution built to outlast every generation serving within it. Charles preserved stability. Camilla accepted boundaries she had never expected to face. Philip's planning continued shaping events after his lifetime had ended. The immediate conflict had reached its conclusion, but the larger question remained unresolved. Had protecting the future of the crown required such a deeply personal price? Or had history witnessed duty triumph over compassion once again? So, what do you think? Was Philip's secret decree a necessary protection for the crown or an unfair blow against Camilla? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.